Great, so welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. We're really happy to be here. I know Melissa's happy I'm here because I'm 37 weeks pregnant. And at some point she thought she'd have to do the solo, but I'm here hopefully till the end of the lecture. So welcome. It's really great that you're here and show this common interest in raising healthy children. So tonight hopefully we'll have an interesting discussion on growing up with social media, the good, the bad, and the unknown. It's certainly a new topic for all of us, something that was not covered in medical school or residency, but in my mind today is just as important as talking about drunk driving or vaccines. It's up on my priority list. So my job as a pediatrician is to inform parents of all the information they need to make good choices. At the end of the day, you're taking your kids home and raising them, but hopefully we'll kind of cover this really broad topic and give you all the information you need to make good decisions. So I always think of myself as a young with-it parent. When parents in my office see that I'm pregnant, they always say, "Is it your first?" And I say, "It's actually my fourth," which it is. But out of college, I made a Facebook page, and I feel like I'm up with the technology. But to be quite honest, I recently visited my college campus, which I graduated 15 years ago, and I felt like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Happy Feet, where the penguin is captured and ends up in an aquarium, gets up to the glass and looks at people who he calls aliens. And that's what I felt like when I was on my college campus. I saw children where we used to have lunch and sit and talk to each other face to face, eye to eye, and no one was looking at each other. They were all focusing on a device. They were communicating, they were connected, which is good, but there were very few face-to-face conversations happening. So it's interesting. We've been thrown a curveball, and we've been asked to raise children in a world which hardly resembles what we grew up in. So tonight, we're hopefully going to give you all the information to raise healthy children. So what is it like to grow up in this digital age? There is a study which is quoted in every book, every article I read, which I personally find unbelievable. I don't know how you'll feel about it. So in 2010, the Kaiser Family Foundation did a study, and they were able to quantify how much time a child these days is spending with media. And with media, we're not just talking about social media. Start simple, old-fashioned television, video games, telephones, iPads, iPhone, iTouches, you name it, and video games. And a kid 8 to 18 is spending 7.5 hours a day total, on average, with media. That's more time than they're spending at school, and more time than they're spending with their parents. So that's just to give you an idea of how life has changed. And we all certainly grew up in a different age. We were carefree, we were unplugged. The only interactions we had were really face-to-face with people. Maybe occasionally you would make a telephone call from a phone that was plugged to the wall, but that was kind of as far as we went in terms of communicating with friends not face-to-face. There's no doubt about it. The world today is fast-paced. Kids are ready for instant gratification. They hear a movie's good. They don't have to wait for it to come out in the theater. They probably can click and just watch it on their computer. If their favorite musician comes out with a new song, click, they can download it onto their iPod. So kids today certainly are used to instant gratification and aren't as patient as we grew up. One important thing to remember is that we're the last generation of parents who know what it's like to be unplugged. So we all kind of have to reflect what was important about being unplugged and attempt to carry those characteristics to this generation, because they don't know what it's like to be unplugged, whether it's turning off the television at dinner, during carpool time, not letting your children text on their telephones. That's probably the best time for parents to talk to their children is in the car these days. So it's important for us to reflect what it was like to be unplugged and kind of carry that on to the next generation. So there's something that we call the digital divide, and if you look at the children in this picture, this is kind of what children look like these days. I don't know. Does anyone in the audience have a gut reaction, good or bad, to what they see, what these children look like to them? To me, I have a negative reaction when I see these children. This, to me, is not what childhood should look like, but it's what it does. It's the reality. So the digital divide the literature refers to us as the digital immigrants. We came into this generation versus the digital natives. So there's obviously a big divide with how kids pick up technology and view the world and how we do. As a pediatrician, whenever we approach any topic, whether it's language development, eating, school performance, we have to break it down by age because obviously a 2-year-old is very different than a teenager. So first we have our toddlers. And again, our children are born into this age. So they're starting to pick up media at the age of 1.5. They really are. So just in general, pediatricians, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that toddlers don't have screen time at all. The best way to teach a toddler about the world around them is unplugged, on the floor, listening to music, playing games. So just a reminder, they'll probably be exposed, especially if there's older siblings in the house, but we really recommend for this age group to be unplugged. So next we have our young preschoolers, 2 to 4, and they're going to start using media. I don't know if you have children, grandchildren, but these kids know how to use a remote. They know how to navigate themselves around a computer. So again, for this age group, we want to limit screen time to no more than 2 hours a day. The best way for this age group to learn is still unplugged with one-on-one parent interaction. But positive things that you can do with them on computers and with social media are to communicate with family members. So to Skype family members who live far away. Also to share family pictures with them that will help improve their memory and improve their language. So you can have a nice experience with them captured on photo and then review the photos with these children, ask them about what they remember, what they see, and that can really make their language boost to the next level. And our early elementary school kids, the 5 to 6-year-olds, are starting to read. So when they get on the computer, they're going to want to start reading content and searching on websites. So with this age group, we should encourage them to do so with the appropriate websites. And there's actually a great search engine similar to Yahoo that I found called Kidzui, Kidzui. And it's a kid-appropriate, really starting at this age, search engine, which will filter what websites you can come across, what YouTube videos you can view. It allows kids the freedom to learn about a computer, but to stay safe and not fall upon any inappropriate content. So now we have our school-age children, the 7 to 8-year-olds who are improving their reading and writing skills, improving their computer skills. And, well, they're going to want to search for things, too. They're curious. So a good habit to get into with this age group is to bookmark. If you find a good site, bookmark it so they can go back. They can find it themselves, and they don't have to search. Searching is never a good thing on the Internet. So the more you can bookmark and find good sites that you approve of, the better. And now we have our tweens. It's a new term, the 9 to 12-year-olds. The best thing about this age group is they are still listening to us. They are very interested in rules, and they want to follow the rules. So this is the most important age. By the age of 2, our children have been exposed and are learning about the world around them as we know it with computers, internet, cell phones. But these tweens are really interested in the rules. So everything that we talk about, especially when we get into the bad part of the lecture, is to start talking to the tweens now, because when they're teens, they're not so much going to listen to us. So a teenager's job in life is to explore who they are, to take risks. That's what they do. And at the end of the day, most teens come out of this period as strong adults with a good sense of who they are. They've developed their identity through experimenting. Now, the interesting thing these days is teens are doing this in a public arena. So that's very different than when we grew up. And if teens, by nature, want to push limits, they certainly have a place to push limits now. So we really have to watch out for them. So to really set the rules in the tween years so that the teens have a chance of listening to us. So the good. It seems like we've only kind of touched upon the bad already. It's really important to consider what's good about social media and the internet and the new world as we know it. Because if we don't, then our kids won't be safe. I know a lot of times in my office I'll have a little toddler who's playing an iPhone application and ask their mother how to do a part of the game, and the mom kind of has a, I don't know, ask your brother kind of thing. And that's how we all feel, because kids are more technologically advanced than us. But that obviously is not the best approach to take. You don't have to be the champion of Angry Birds as a parent, but at least you can fake it a little so that the parents, that your children feel like you're living on the same planet as them. You want to kind of set the groundwork that we're comfortable with technology too, so that by the time our kids are older and you really have to address the real important issues, they'll be on board. Well, socializing is a good thing. Socializing is healthy. It's good for children to connect to others. It's part of growing up and developing a strong sense of who they are. And if you think about it, a lot of socializing occurs at school. We're not always involved. But if we can kind of take this new age as an opportunity to socialize with our children and give them a little more guidance than maybe we have in the past because we're entering a new arena, it could be a good thing, such as there's an expression, sending an email from your hip, meaning you receive an email, you have a gut reaction, and you send something back without thinking. And usually, obviously, that's not a good way to communicate with people. So you can talk about these issues with your children and teach them the golden rule, think before you speak. Think of the ramifications. So in a way, there's a lot of socializing happening and an opportunity for parents to really, really help out. Communicating is obviously a good thing. It's helpful for day-to-day communication. In general, we recommend for children not to have cell phones till at least middle school, or an age where, for safety, you would need to communicate with them. So if they're walking home from school, you would, have a way to communicate with them. Change of plans, you'd have a way to communicate with them. Less than the age of a middle schooler, there's really no reason for a child to have a cell phone. So another good thing about internet is the ability for kids to create. Not only are they drawing pictures that are static, they're able to create and share, which is a good thing. And playing. There's lots of opportunities with video games for kids to play, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Play, we think of, is a child's work. So playing is helpful for child development. Kids can explore. If they're curious, they can search. They can answer their own questions. And, of course, learning. These are all good applications of social media.
Okay, thank you, Stacy, for going over some of the positive aspects of the social media. My job is to cover the negative aspects, because there are some negative aspects that our kids are up against. And my goal is to make you more aware of what they are, what your children are doing out there, and hopefully you'll leave a little bit more knowledgeable and less in the dark on how to raise positive, responsible digital citizens. So let's get started. Kids connect and collaborate, which can be positive, as Stacy was saying, but in many ways they're communicating with friends, and not only friends, but friends of friends whom they don't know. Sometimes strangers on social media sites like Facebook. They're doing this with video games such as World of Warcraft, sometimes on their Xbox playing Halo with the headphone sets. So they're talking to people that they really don't know, which in some cases can be a negative aspect. And of course, as kids connect with people more and more online, parents are concerned about the possibilities that they can be at risk for interacting with sexual predators. And despite all the hype in the media, research actually shows that it is not very likely for kids to come in contact with sexual predators if they're acting responsibly online. So that's our job as parents, to educate them that just because you think you know someone doesn't mean they're who they say that they are. So it's really important to let your children know that if they're speaking to someone who says that they're the same age, there's a possibility that they're not if they're a stranger. Obviously, if they're friends and they know that they're on Facebook speaking to a friend, that's okay. In nearly all the cases we hear about where children do come in contact with sexual predators, they have been lured in some way to think that this person is younger or to think that this person will commit to them. And a large majority of kids, especially in my practice, will actually tell you that if a stranger contacts them, they just block the stranger. They actually will say it's kind of creepy. The most important thing for parents to be aware of is the relationships that their children have offline. Because oftentimes if children have difficulty making relationships offline, they're going to look for inappropriate relationships online. So that's the one tip I could really give you in this area to be really aware of. Look at who your kids are interacting with at school, in extracurricular activities, and get to know their friends and get to know their friends' parents so that you can be aware if they're making healthy relationships offline, because it often will help you understand what kind of relationships they might be making online. Moving on to something else that's an issue for children today is that they connect with so many different people online, and they have an opportunity to reach such a vast audience. And they're thinking it's just taking place between them and a friend, and that's not always necessarily the case. At this age, in talking about the tween and teenage years, because they're usually the ones connecting on Facebook, they want recognition, they want positive reinforcement, but sometimes they're going to get negative reinforcement from 15 minutes of fame. So they could video something at a friend's house and place it on YouTube, and within minutes get 1 million people to watch their video, which at the moment might seem really cool to them, but what they're not aware of is that anyone can make comments on this video, not necessarily positive. So the recognition that they can get might be too much for them to handle after this 15 minutes of what they think is going to be fame. And the other thing that they're not aware of is that they think that just their friends are looking at their information. They're not aware of all the other people that can be looking at their information and interpreting what they originally said and taking it out of context. So not only is the fact that they're connecting with people they might not be aware of an issue, but it's that who they're connecting with may misinterpret their information that they're actually placing online. So as part of exploring their identity, kids will post almost anything, just to learn about themselves, to be able to connect with friends. But what they're not realizing is that it's easy to find this information, that everything they're posting is searchable by somebody. And because everything is searchable, it's really easy for people to find. So this runs into the problem of kids not necessarily thinking before they post, which Stacy touched upon. Now, by nature, teenagers are impulsive. Not all of them. Some of you may disagree and think all of them are. Some of them can make responsible choices without necessarily too much guidance. But by nature, they tend to be a little bit impulsive, and they don't think before they post. And even if they're not thinking about what they're posting, they're certainly not thinking about how someone else might interpret what they posted, because they think they know, well, this is what it meant. I didn't mean that. They're not thinking further ahead about the consequences of what this could mean for them, which leads to damage to reputation. I mean, not only amongst friends and peers, but we do know that college administration, offices, and employers are looking at what people are posting on social media websites. And some kids are not getting into the college of their choice because of this. They're not getting the internships that they want in college because of this. So they need to be aware that it's not only friends that are looking at this information, it's other people are looking at it as well. And it could damage their reputation. I have an example from a case of mine, and this happened yesterday in my office, and they told me to share it. My patient was on Facebook, and on Facebook you can have your own page, which has your friends and all the pictures that you post. But there's something that's called a news feed, which is all the friends that you have on Facebook post pictures and stuff, and it just flips through your news feed randomly. They don't, say, post it on Melissa's page. And she saw a post of what looked like a video, and she didn't know what it was, so she clicked on it, and it ended up being a very inappropriate video. The mother is calling it pornographic in nature, and because she clicked on the video, it then said that she liked this video, because that's something else that happens on Facebook. You can click on a picture and say, I like that, so everyone knows you looked at their picture. What ended up happening was that her mother noticed that this was on Facebook through her news feed and said, what is this? Why did you open this? And she said, I didn't. I opened it and I immediately clicked off of it. I never liked this. And the mom did some research and found that there's spam on Facebook that is doing exactly this. Kids are all of a sudden seeing a link that they didn't post, opening it, and then it's saying that they liked this or that this is something that they were interested in. And had her mom not seen this, this could have potentially damaged her reputation because it was a very, very provocative video. So lo and behold, she chose very maturely to just take her whole entire Facebook page down for a while because that was the only way to get rid of this. She couldn't take it off her page without taking her whole profile down. So she made a good choice. But not every child would make that choice, or not every child would even know that that happened. Luckily, her mom saw it. That's the problem with some of these websites. You're not really aware of where all this information is going. The other issue is that kids don't really associate actions with consequences because a lot of this is done anonymously. You don't have to say who you are when you're posting stuff sometimes on some of these websites. There's actually a website called Spring Forum that is all about being anonymous. I'm not quite sure why anyone would want to do this, but teenagers find that this lures them in, that I don't have to to say who I am, and they're able to comment on this website called Spring Forum and just actually say pretty nasty things about each other. And then I think the game is who said this? Do you know who said this? But it ends up really causing issues with confidence for these children. So the fact that things are anonymous leads to a big issue with cyberbullying because children tend to be a lot meaner if they don't think that someone's going to know who they are. They believe that the consequences aren't going to happen for their actions because no one will know who they are. So they're saying things that are much more hurtful online than they might say in front of someone. What I tend to notice is that the other problem with cyberbullying is that adults may not be aware this is happening. So, in the past, if someone was bullied in school, in the cafeteria, or at recess, a teacher or an adult might pick up on the fact that something negative was happening. But if your child's in their bedroom with their phone and getting a text or on Facebook right before bed and something negative comes through, they may not tell anyone. And I think that they're holding a lot of this in and not sharing when they're cyberbullied because as much as sometimes they're being bullied anonymously, they want to keep it private. And it is easier for them to keep it private. So I think it's very important to educate your children about cyberbullying and how it's just as inappropriate as if it's done in face-to-face contact. So we have things being able to be posted anonymously, which exasperates the cyberbullying, as well as things moving around freely. This is now a cut-and-paste culture. So you could go on Google, find something you like, cut it, and paste it onto a Word document, and you can actually say it's yours, which we'll get to later. So the fact that everything can be cut and pasted also makes it really hard for kids to keep things in one spot once they post, which they're really not aware of, which makes things go viral, meaning that they're posting it in one area and then it's just getting sent on. So for example, I worked with a patient in the past who was not aware that when he got into an argument after school with a few male peers, it was being videoed. And before he knew it, this video was placed online. And the next day when he came into school, everyone was talking to him, why are you going to let them push you around like that? He wasn't even aware that the video was posted. So it just goes to show that something can happen after school outside, and then within minutes, the whole school knows about it. And it's really hard to get that rumor, what used to be a rumor, because it was like telephone, you say it in someone's ear and then it changes. Now this is like concrete video. This is things that are posted. It's much harder to get to explain yourself when things like that happen. So along with information going viral, there's what we call sexting, which exasperates cyberbullying as well. And sexting is when children are sending explicit photos of themselves or messages, whether it's via text messages or sometimes even instant messaging if they're using messages. And they're usually doing this to tell someone that they're committed to the relationship, to show off a little bit, to entice someone. The problem with this is that relationships end at this age, often very quickly. And once the relationship ends, this information is still in someone's phone or has already been passed on. And another case example from my past is a teenage girl who was in a committed relationship for probably about 4 to 5 months with a boy, and she sent a picture that she should have never sent. And they broke up, like all teenagers do. And she was sitting in class, and her friend, who was a male, was sitting next to her and said, "Hey, I want you to see this." And he showed her his phone, and on that phone was that picture of her. Now, luckily, he was showing her so that she knew it happened, because she may have never known it happened if he didn't tell her. And he was telling her so that he could help her take that picture off some other people's phones. And he did help her, but she still, to this day, doesn't know who else had that picture. So this in combination really makes it difficult for kids, and they're not really aware of the ramifications of sending something like that so impulsively. So again, our job as parents to educate them that this doesn't necessarily end when you when you press send or post. Which means that all of this stuff is persistent and out there, and it's very difficult for us to get it back. So, for example, I'll use another Facebook example to educate you guys. There's something that you can do on Facebook, which is tagging. So you could take a photo and place it on your Facebook page and tag as many people as you want. So Susie goes to a party Friday night, and pictures are being taken, and come Monday, she sees these pictures on her Facebook page, and she said, "I don't want anyone to see these." So she asked the person who tagged her, "Please take that off," and she untagged her photo. The problem is that person may have tagged 25 other people who also sent it on. So though you can try to get it off your page, get it off your friend's page, we're still not sure if it's out there. It's like it's lost in this black hole out there somewhere. And this comes into what we'll talk about a little bit later, how not only do you need to protect your own privacy, but you need to protect your friend's privacy. And I often talk to my patients about, talk to your friend. Ask them, is it okay if I post those pictures from the softball game the other night? They may not want their pictures posted. So it's important for kids to realize once things are out there, it's very, very difficult to erase. Which leads to what we call digital footprints. Adults do this, kids do this. We all have digital footprints in the media now because once it's out there, it's there. And kids need to understand that wherever they go on the internet, they're leaving these digital footprints. I'm talking from a negative point of view, but these digital footprints can be positive, and that's our job. We want to educate our children so that they can have positive digital footprints in this ever-growing social media world.
Thank you. So we've covered the good, the bad, and now the unknown. So we're not quite sure what the health risks are of living in this new age. I know the number one thing that pediatricians are concerned about is obesity. And with computers and technology, you can literally spend the entire day fulfilling most of your needs on the couch. You can order food, have it delivered to you. You can be fully entertained and feel like you're communicating with people. So this clearly is not helpful when it comes to the epidemic of obesity. Other health risks that we don't know about, stories are starting to come out, but we're not quite sure exactly what the risks are enough to make recommendations, are the effect of radiation. So, we've heard of adverse outcomes, early studies, using cell phones, but, holding an iPad on a 2-year-old's lap certainly is giving off lots of radiation, and we're not quite sure where that will go in the future in terms of increased cancer rates. Other health risks, kids who have social phobias, who have true issues with leaving their house. Now they don't have to. They can find a world that they feel safe in, and that certainly isn't helping them get out there and overcome their phobias. Other unknown areas is, what is this doing to socialization? What will a person be like 10 years from now interviewing for a job when they're not used to talking to someone face-to-face? Is it different to quickly text "I'm sorry" versus a face-to-face, true, genuine "I'm sorry"? So how will parents in the future raise their future generations when they're not really getting practice having one-on-one interactions? The effect on relationships. A lot of people feel connected. They feel like the relationships are strong, but is it different to email and text family members versus making a lunch date? In terms of academic ability, certainly I know my writing ability, my spelling has gone downhill using computers, a spell check. How are teenagers learning to really write when they're not doing it with a paper and pencil anymore? And just in general, texting can interfere with school performance and good homework studying time. a lot of us are feel like we're multitasking, but what it really means to multitask is to be productive and get a lot done at the same time. But with digital media now, we kind of have a continuous partial attention to the world around us. We're doing a lot, our foot is in a lot, we're kind of following a lot in the background, but we're not necessarily multitasking. We're not really getting the job done. We're kind of doing a lot at once, but nothing really well. And then there's actual changes to our brain. And the important thing is a child's brain is developing up until the age of 20. Their prefrontal cortex, which is what makes them human in terms of social interactions and judgment, is developing. And hopefully when you're an adult, you have a good, strong prefrontal cortex. The issue with the current socialization that is taking place is, are we really developing this area of the brain? And unknown in terms of safety, a few scary stories have been out there. Predators aren't necessarily that digitally educated, so they haven't really gotten into the realm. Our biggest nightmare is a kidnapper locating our child through computers, but that doesn't happen as common as we would think. But in the future, I think unfortunately, it's an unknown area. The story's yet to be told. So, as we raise our digital citizens, and we want you to all walk away with strong, sound ideas of how to keep our children safe, I guess the biggest thing to think about is that this social media is not going anywhere. And the key, as in anything in life, is to teach our children to strike a balance. It's not just good, it's not bad, but we need to kind of make sure that we have plug time and unplugged time in our lives. We're just going to go through quickly safety tips, and we have a handout which is in the back for you all to take home. So basic rules of the road. First of all, embrace their world. It's probably the best thing you can do to raise healthy children is to have a Facebook page of your own, to become their friend. Be in this world together. You don't want to feel like your children are in one world and you're in the other. How can you parent that way? Again, encourage balance. Use the general rule of thumb is as much time that you're plugged in, you should be unplugged. A child really needs to learn to feel comfortable being unplugged. Again, that statistic, the number of hours spent a day, 7.5 hours a day being connected and exposed to media, obviously is not so balanced. Monitor media use as best you can. Try to get a sense of the content that your children are looking at. And there's several programs. Norton has a great program that's actually free that you can install on your computer where you can view every place where your child has been throughout a 24-hour period. And again, discuss what sites they can visit and what they can download.
So protecting personal privacy, which I touched upon a little bit before, is so important. We want to explain that nothing's really private, whether it's on Facebook or on cell phones. They need to realize that if they send it on, somebody's going to have it and they can send it on as well. What I tell patients, I tell my nephews, is if you get something sent to your cell phone and you think it's inappropriate, delete it. That's it. Delete it and then deal with it, just so that it's off your phone and that it doesn't get sent by accident and then it's not in your hands. So if you just really have to explain to them nothing's private, and if it gets sent on, it can just continue to be sent on as well. It's very important to help your kids set up privacy settings. A lot of them feel that if they're going to join a website, it's automatically set up to be the way they would like it to be. I recommend to parents to sit down with them, go on Facebook with them, go on the privacy settings, and help them figure out what privacy settings would be best for them. The other important thing with this is that if they have iPhones, I'm not sure if it's any other phone that has data, but to turn off the GPS on their iPhone, what that means is that if they take a photo and they post it online, it tells where they were when the photo was taken. So for example, I have someone in my neighborhood who was going around on Halloween from house to house taking pictures of her family and then was posting them. And at the end of the night, there was basically a map of every house that she covered based on this GPS that was on her phone, and she didn't even realize it was there because she's an adult and she knows less about technology than the kids do. Now, the kids, either they know about this or they don't, and maybe they know about it and don't think it's a big deal, but it's very important when you're helping them set privacy settings to turn that off. Another thing is to keep their passwords private. Obviously, you want to know what their password is, but keep it private from their friends. I also recommend every few months having them change their passwords because you never know if they're changing it behind your back. That's one reason, and just so that in case anyone was ever going to get into the computer, they're protected.
So in terms of creating an identity, before a child posts something, they should be trained. Imagine if the college of your dreams were to do a Google search on you, and that's what they do these days. You know, what would the impression that you're making be on the admissions officer? Once you put something out there, it's there to stay. And talk about risky behavior, you can do it. You know, you don't want to accuse your children of things that aren't occurring. You can use hypothetical examples. And again, the tweens, the 9 to 12-year-olds, are really the kids to start setting the ground rules with because they're listening. And discuss accountability. You know, if you wouldn't say something to someone's face, even though it's easier to type it, you don't have to see their reaction. You know, you shouldn't be posting it online either.
We want to encourage your creativity. I always recommend that parents look with their children to find out what websites could help them, whether they're into art or music. You just want to know how to further your own family values using this social media so that you could help them be creative. Explain that cheating online is still cheating. There's cases of kids texting answers to each other, finding stuff online that they can, you know, use that's not their work. You have to explain that it's still cheating, even though it's not necessarily with the cheat sheet on their lap any longer. And talk about copyright issues. There's no more card catalogs. They find things online, which is wonderful. This is the positive part of it. But they need to be able to cite things and realize what plagiarism is. Going back to what I was talking about earlier with the cut and paste culture, they can cut and paste anything, but they need to realize that they do need to not use that as their own because it could get them into trouble down the road. So it's just making sure that all of these things are covered. And these are the kinds of things you could talk to your kids about over dinner or, like Stacey said before, in the car. They can't get away when you're in the car, so I always recommend having talks in the car.
And just the last issue to bring up is to teach your kids what they can trust and believe. I recently had a child come to me because she pierced her belly button from watching a YouTube video. That's how she received her information. It was just funny to listen to her talk. I followed all their instructions. I sterilized the needle, this and that. Probably not a medical site. So, you know, kids will read something and they'll have no idea if it's you know, a child posting it or a physician. Not that a physician would give those instructions. They'll hear stories and believe them. Teach them as they get older to cross-reference different sites. If they just read it in one place, probably not true. If it's something that they read over and over on reputable sites, especially ones that are followed by org or edu, then probably a better source of information. Never really trust that a person, especially a stranger, is who they say they are. An 18-year-old girl who you start to chat with might not be an 18-year-old girl. And just to bring up marketing, which also leads us back to obesity. The websites are tracking everything that you look at, and the marketing is targeted towards you. So children kind of believe everything that they see, and it's kind of important for them to realize that there is a business aspect to the internet. So just in conclusion, use your real-world parenting instincts in their new digital world. We're really all living in one world, and if we remember that and we don't write off social media and the internet and new technology as something bad, we have a better chance of keeping our kids safe. Approach every day that my child doesn't look at a computer as the good one. But I think a good general rule to follow is, especially when kids are little, you want to respect their privacy as they get older, but to keep computers in a common place, and for them not to go to their bedrooms at night with a computer, because as far as you know, they'll be up texting at 2 a.m. I'm seeing a lot of kids in my practice who are fatigued, and they've had blood workups looking for mono and this and that, and then I ask them, what time do you go to bed? What time do you go to sleep? And they'll mention the time they go to their room and their parents think they're asleep. We're like, no, what time are you asleep? And a lot of them, they leave school and the social atmosphere, this new environment continues for 24 hours. So it's different. It definitely is different.
I definitely notice in my practice as well that there's more distractibility with the media now. So if I'm having a patient come for that specific reason, I just have them set boundaries for themselves. So, I mean, maybe if they're older, even if they're 18, they're leaving their phone somewhere. They're leaving it in their car some of the time. Or when they're studying, they're making sure that they're not minimizing Facebook or minimizing something else that they're connecting on their IM. They're really Xing out of all those programs so that they can get their work done. I tend to have them think of it as a reward. So work, for a half hour and then reward yourself with a little bit of Facebook time and then get back to it so that they're not feeling like it's something that they can't have. It's something that they're working towards almost earning.
I guess the reality is they really are connected all the time. We can suggest this, but if they have a telephone, and as a parent you can make a decision what kind of phone to purchase for your child. It doesn't have to be an iPhone. If you want a phone for them, for safety purposes and communication and maybe just texting in terms of, plan changes, they don't need an internet browser on their phone. So we with all of our knowledge about what it feels like, what it felt like to be unconnected, we can change our parenting practices.
I will self-disclose. My phone is not with me. It's in the car, but it is an old-fashioned flip cell phone. Now, a cell phone is not old-fashioned, but it's a flip one. I do not get media sent to my phone. I recently said to a coworker today, the day I get an email sent to my phone is the day I throw my phone across the room. I just don't want to be that connected. But I think that kids today don't know any different. They've been connected for so many years now. They don't know what it's like to not have a cell phone. I don't even remember what it's like to not have a cell phone, but I think they're just so used to growing up this way that they don't understand what they would be devastated if they couldn't be this connected. But one thing to piggyback off what Stacy was saying before is that I think there's also pressure from other peers, and parents are letting their kids get these phones with all this digital stuff and being connected, that when you finally have a parent that says, no, I don't want you to have data on your phone, the child doesn't understand why. And I had one of them sitting in my office last night, very, very upset. But the mom is sticking to it. She does not. You don't need data in middle school. You need to be able to contact me if you need, and you can text your friends. I just think children don't know what it's like to not be so connected.
I think just a good balance. So being a good role model. So sitting down, eating dinner, face-to-face conversation. Teaching. Planning family activities where you're just not connected. You have to teach them what it's like to not be connected. The problem these days is children are so used to being connected that the second they're not connected, they're lonely. They're just lonely. They feel like something's missing. And just to talk more about that, I kind of teach my kids, and it's funny when my 4-year-old repeats my words, that every mommy has their own rules, and that's it. That's period. That's the bottom line.
I think it's important to help them be reinforced by other activities than media. So whether it's a hobby, whether it's a sport, something that doesn't connect them with the media and that they find reinforcing can help them want to put down the phone or want to put down the iPad. But until they make those connections with other stuff, this is what they know. So it's important as parents to help them get involved in other activities. Not overscheduling them, of course, but having them in touch with things that are not media-based can help them realize there's other stuff out there besides text messaging. What I tend to say then is if you want to let them have what everyone else has, then you just have to set really tight boundaries. Because I work with families who have unlimited time. They're the kids who are on media for 7.5 hours a day. And what I say to them is, how are we going to praise and reinforce Johnny if he has everything already? What I would rather is they have this access to this stuff and this media, but when they're doing something that they're supposed to be doing, so that you still have control as a parent over it, and it's not just whenever I want to plug in, I can plug in. I need to ask first. What happened to asking to turn on the TV or asking to start chatting? I mean, I know this is hard to do, but if they'd rather the iPhone or the boundaries, you can have the iPhone if you're going to listen to my boundaries, and if you don't, then I'm going to take it. So sometimes you can have a little leverage, and I'm bigger on positive reinforcement than the negative, than taking away. So if they have access all the time, there's really nothing to give. So it's trying to remember that as well. Yes, I actually did for this presentation. I was frightened. by what I found. Because there's some stuff out there that I didn't think was necessarily appropriate to talk about in this audience, but I do recommend Googling it. Like, for example, parent over my shoulder. POMS, parent over, that's all they're typing. And so that the person knows, I can't talk right now. But there's a lot of other stuff that you can find too, and some very disturbing, but some is just stuff that you really need to know, because they're saying things when you're right over their shoulder and you're not aware of what they're about to do when you go to bed or when you leave the room. So I think Googling it is a great idea.
There's a book also called Cybersafe by Georgia O'Keeffe, who's the expert in the American Academy, and the back glossary is literally a glossary of terms that are used. That's helpful. But also, it's Cybersafe is the book. We can post it tomorrow. Another issue is, are your kids doing what you think they're doing? If they have, headphones on and they're typing, what are they really listening to? So you have to be brave and ask them the questions. And a lot of the monitoring can help, but you want to have the questions ahead of time, the conversations ahead of time. You don't want to catch them doing something that you don't approve of. You want to set the ground rules really early. If you think patience is a good quality, definitely. I mean, sometimes I have to fib and say, like, the TV's broken. But, if it takes that to give us a little unplugged time, a little time without media, of course, patience. Think about how you want your children to raise your grandchildren. Is that a good quality to pass on to the next generation? Absolutely. There's a whole level of monitoring software, some of which is free, some of which you pay for, some of which you can just track what websites your child has been on.
Or block certain websites.
Or block inappropriate content. So again, it's better to counsel in advance and have the conversations instead of catch them doing something. But the monitoring stuff does give you a little bit of comfort, but I think having children use computers in a common space, not in their bedrooms, is kind of the way to go.